Hey everybody, welcome to Truth About Design, where we give candid truth and guidance on the design industry. And today we are going to talk about the ultimate list of UI design tools you actually need. So one of the top questions I get when I'm mentoring students is, what tool should I use? Should I use Sketch, Photoshop? What about Adobe XD? They always ask about Adobe XD. Well, the short version is, if you don't want to watch the whole video, is use Sketch for low and medium fidelity work and Principle for high fidelity work. InVision will soon be obsolete, and you should pay close attention to Figma and Framer X. And as of the recording of this video in December 2018, no other tools are worth using in a real-life production environment. So that's sort of the short of it. Let me give you an explanation about why that is the case. And let's start with just what the truth about UI design tools is. Most of them are the same. Up until 2011, Photoshop was the only tool UX designers had at their disposal. And Photoshop isn't an interface design tool though. It's an image editor that has a few features that are useful for interface design and a whole lot of features that aren't. But because Photoshop was so big and so popular and it worked well enough, no one out there, including me, thought there would ever be any need to ever use anything else. And then in 2011, Sketch app launched, and it was the first dedicated interface design tool. Because there was no one else at the time making dedicated UI design tools, a lot of people were skeptical of this newfangled, unproven tool that was going to take on Photoshop. So because of that, Sketch was able to gobble up tons of market share for years before anyone was able to respond. They also played it very smart by turning Sketch into a platform that others could develop additional add-ons for, so they could thereby rapidly expand their reach and ecosystem. And Sketch was in a very special position at that time because they offered a tool that was truly 10 times better than the competition. And because it was 10 times better than the competition, it was clearly better, and it was obvious to everyone. That made it worthwhile for companies and teams to spend money and time on switching to a new workflow for their organizations. Now, the courage of the Sketch developers to put themselves out there and create a new tool, and the subsequent success that they had with that, led to a flood of trend followers building new UI design tools. But most of them offer little to no differentiation from Sketch. So at this point, asking which UI design tool is better is like asking which drill is better. They all do the same things in very similar ways, and the real deciding factor for which tool you're going to use isn't what it can do, because all the tools can build a UI with basic interactions. The real questions you need to ask are, what is my team using? What is my company using? And what are the industry standards? And for most cases, for most work, that's going to be Sketch. You see, companies aren't going to switch to a new tool again after they just switched their entire team and their entire workflow to Sketch 2 or 3 years ago, just because this new tool on the block does one or two things slightly better than Sketch. You have to remember, switching to a new tool, it costs money, it costs time in terms of retraining employees, it costs time and money in terms of adjusting your workflow, in terms of seeing how it fits into the rest of your process. All of that stuff you're not going to do for a tool that's just like 5% better. It's just not worth it. And also Sketch is in, now because of that, Sketch is in this position that Photoshop used to be in, but they're not resting on their laurels like Photoshop did. Sketch is slowly making InVision obsolete by including cloud-based prototyping tools. And there are also a number of third-party animation add-ons for Sketch where you can do your entire workflow from low to high fidelity, including animations and micro interactions inside of Sketch. I have to say though, I haven't tried those third-party tools yet. I haven't seen anyone use them either, but they look really interesting. So if any one of you out there has used them, I would love to hear what you think about them. Now, okay, so you'll use Sketch for low to medium fidelity. Now for high fidelity, micro interactions and animations, use Principle. Sketch is the industry standard for creating static mockups and prototypes with basic interactivity. But if you want to do more complex prototyping and animations, that's currently not possible in Sketch without these plugins that I mentioned earlier. And the tool that I've seen that gets is getting the most adoption for that kind of complex work is Principle. And Principle allows you to just easily take your Sketch files, import them in, and just do animations on the files that you create in Sketch. And there's a reason why it's been adopted by all the major players in the design space, because it does what it does really, really well. It doesn't really intrude on anyone else's space. It has like a clearly defined niche that it does extremely well. Now, those are the two tools that I recommend you use now. There are two other tools that I recommend you watch over the next year and see how they develop. So the tools to watch are Framer X and Figma. Most of the user interface design tools out there aren't different enough from Sketch to give you a real reason to switch, but those two tools take a very different approach to Sketch for UI design. And because they're built from scratch around this new approach, there's a chance that the risk that they took by trying this new approach will pay off in a way that Sketch will not be able to adjust to. And the number one tool to watch out for is Figma, which is basically Google Docs, but for interface design. You know how in Google Docs, you and your friends can work on that essay or that presentation together at the same time, and it always gets auto-saved in the cloud, and you can access it from any computer. So that's what Figma has done for interface design. They basically took Sketch and put it into a browser. Now, Figma is the top contender right now for taking Sketch's crown because it has a lot of financial backing from Silicon Valley. They release updates every week. It's free if you're a solo designer. They are platform agnostic, which means that it works on any computer. So that means that they will be able to grab market share from non-Mac users and from people who can't afford Sketch. And also, it has, with its real-time collaboration features, it has a legitimate point of differentiation from Sketch. And that's something that Sketch won't easily be able to copy. They can't just take their current tool and their current technical infrastructure and just throw it all out and switch to a cloud-based architecture. So there's a competitive moat that Figma has there, where if it works out, they could leapfrog Sketch, but we'll see. It's the fastest growing tool right now for sure, and it's definitely one to watch. The other tool to watch is Framer X. What they're trying to do is bridge the gap between design and code. So what sets Framer X apart is its deep integration with development tools. So theoretically, you can design in Framer and just export production-ready code. And that could dramatically speed up the workflow and collaboration between designers and engineers. But what I'm wondering is the improvement in workflow so much better that it's worth switching to another tool again? Will designers be willing to fiddle with code? It's kind of hard to tell at this point. Framer is also not free. It's $15 a month or $12 a month if you pay annually, which is more expensive than a yearly license of Sketch. And so with that pricing model and that feature set, I'm not completely sure which audience they're targeting. So my hypothesis is that the engineering side of things is just too complex and too in-depth to be taken on by a design tool. And I also think that designers won't have interest in doing that. It reminds me a lot of what companies tried to do with Dreamweaver and editors like that 15 years ago. Those editors worked fine for smaller projects, but they never worked for true hardcore production environments. With that said, Framer X is a well thought out tool, and it also has a lot of resources behind it. So we'll see. Now, you might be wondering, what about the other tools out there? And I really think that for real life work settings right now, I recommend you don't even bother with any other tools but Sketch and Principle. Beginners in every industry love overthinking which tool to use because it's much, much easier to think about, ooh, should I use Sketch or should I use Framer or should I use Figma? It's much easier than actually sitting down and doing work and becoming better as a designer. But and you see that in every industry. You don't just see that in the design industry, you see that in the photography industry. If you visit some photography forums, every noob photographer is obsessing over what lens to buy instead of going out and taking photos, not knowing that a legit professional photographer can take better photos with your iPhone than you can take with their Canon 5D. Same thing in like the cooking industry or anywhere else. Gordon Ramsay can cook better food in your kitchen with your utensils than you can, because the tools don't matter as much as the person using them. You know, a fantastic designer can design a better UI in MS Paint than a noob can in Figma, because, you know, the tools are just there to make certain tasks easier, but it's the mind behind the tools that produces the outcome. So with that said, so again, if you're working on real life projects, use Sketch in principle. If you just want to try things out, there's another site out there. It's called uxtools.co, and they give a rundown and a comparison of all the tools that are popular in the industry right now. So that's where I would go to check out more about, if you just want to try out tools in private to sort of practice and see what else is out there. That's why I would recommend you go to find out more about other tools. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. And if you have any questions, message us at info@truthaboutdesign.com. And you know, if you love this content, keep checking out truthaboutdesign.com for more. And you know, that's it for this video, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.